What's up again, everybody? Today's the day. It's Illusionist Day. We finally made it all the way through the classes of Everfest. We're going to give every single Illusionist card a ranking today between 1 star and 5 stars. 5 being the best, absolute super nuts. 1 being, it is a great coaster. You put it on your table, you put your cup on said card, and it makes a fantastically absorbent coaster. So let's find out what they all get. We're doing Illusionist. Last time we did, what was it? What did we do? Wizard. We did the Wizard last time, and now we're doing Illusionist. So let's jump into it with Crown of Reflection. Crown of Reflection is the Illusionist head equipment that blocks for nothing. It blocks for 0, and it says instant, destroy Crown of Reflection. Destroy target Illusionist aura that you control. So you just pick one of your auras and destroy it. This could also be a token. If you have a token aura like a Spectral Shield, you can technically destroy that. If you do, you can put an Illusionist aura from your hand into the arena with cost less than or equal to the aura destroyed this way. Activate Crown of Reflection only during your own action phase. So there's not some like weird trick that you can do where your opponent's trying to destroy it on their turn and you swap it out. This is something you do on your turn only. I very much want to point this out. This also has Arcane Barrier 1 on it. So first of all, this is a headpiece with Arcane Barrier 1. That's pretty solid because you kind of want some portion of your equipment dedicated to swapping into Arcane Barrier. That's super solid in today's meta game that runs a lot of, you run up against a lot of like rune blades and things like that. Having a single piece of equipment that can be your Arcane Barrier allows you more flexibility, and this is another option for Arcane Barrier on your piece of equipment. As for the ability itself, doing this at instant speed, here's a fun trick that you can do. There's a bunch of 0 cost auras in this set, in Everfest, and if you destroy a Spectral Shield is assumed to have a 0 cost, a cost of 0. As per the rules of the game, it costs nothing. If you destroy a Spectral Shield, you can swap in one of your other auras. Now, why would you do that instead of just playing it? I don't know, you do it. You do it, though. You could also, in the moment where, let's say you have an aura down that triggers some effect, when one of your other auras is destroyed, you can use Crown of Reflection to bring another aura into play from your hand, trigger that effect originally, or trigger the effect from the other aura that's already in play and waiting for something to be destroyed, and then you get the effect of playing an aura and whatever that new aura does, as well as the effect of destroying something and gaining benefit. So there are some little interesting tricks. I do think that is kind of cool, but mainly the fact that effect coupled with Arcane Barrier makes this fairly flexible. I give this overall like a 3 star. I don't know if I take this out though in like Prism. I'm not sure if I take this out, or I should say, I'm not sure if I swap this in and take out the other headpiece, because the other headpiece allows us to do all the crazy Tome of Divinity terms. It just makes Tome of Divinity that much better, and this doesn't necessarily do that unless you have the, jump through hoops setup of whatever you destroy going to your soul, and then you can still do that, but it doesn't even trigger on your opponent's turn because this can only be activated on your turn. So I'm not as high on this as, like the other headpiece that we all run. So I'd prefer that over this, but still, it's like functional. Like you could put this in the sideboard and just say, sweet, I want the Arcane Barrier and I don't want Spell Void. So boom, there you go. That's your option. Fractal Replication is a 0 cost Majestic. It's an Illusionist action attack. It blocks for star and it attacks for star. Costs nothing though, and it says when you play or defend with Fractal Replication, it gains the abilities and effects of all Illusionist attack action cards on the combat chain. Fractal Replication's attack is equal to the greatest base attack among all Illusionist attack action cards in the combat chain. Fractal Replication's defense is blah blah blah. You get the picture. It just copies whatever is on the greatest thing on the combat chain. Now, a couple of things about this. One, if you don't actually have anything on the combat chain, like let's say you attack with a Herald and your opponent pops it, well, it's gone, it's not on the combat chain. Let's say you attack with a Herald and the opponent lets it hit, well, it goes to your soul most likely, so it's gone, it's off the combat chain. So this doesn't copy things, of course, this makes sense, doesn't copy things that aren't on the combat chain. But if you use one of these new school like illusionist attacks, these ones that don't necessarily want to be popped, they are more often to stay on the combat chain. And this also encourages you to play some of the sort of generic illusionist attacks, the ones that stick around on the combat chain already, like your Enigma Chimeras of the world, essentially. It encourages those to be played alongside of this because they stick. I mean, you can also play a couple of the cards that we'll talk about coming up next, including the next one. But just base understanding of how this gains attack and how this gains defense. It's going to gain attack based on whatever's stuck to the combat chain, and things have to actually stick in Prism. Now, it is so weird to try and talk about the use case scenarios for this card. I just want to very briefly lay out some of the things that are literally printed on the rules policy, the release notes for Everfest. I just want to point a few of these out, and maybe I'll put a screenshot of some of these. I just want to say this. If you play this and this copies like a when you play effect, like for example, E-Strike, when you play E-Strike, you have to tuck a card. If you play this down and you copy E-Strike, and again, I'll tell you how in a second. If you copy that, the when you play doesn't trigger, okay? When you attack with this, it will copy any when you attack kind of effects that have been applied to illusionist auras. It will copy those and it will actually do those as well. It will trigger those, which is kind of cool. So you're getting none of the downside of like the when you play on an E-Strike, but you may not get like the upside of any of the other when you plays. You are getting like, on hit effects applied to this. So if you apply an on hit effect to a card with like pummel, then Fractal Replication will copy the pummel text, which is very super powerful. This is one of those cards. Oh, by the way, and yeah, you can turn, this is what I was going to say, you can turn things like E-Strike into illusionist attacks by playing like cards like Veiled Intentions, okay? We'll talk about that as we get to Veiled Intentions, the last card we're going to talk about. All this to say, this card is kind of crazy. It may not always see play depending on the matchup, because sometimes things, you just may not expect things to stick. But because of the way that they released illusionist attacks in this set, and because of the illusionist attacks themselves, you have more chances, if you run those attacks from this set, you have more chances of actually having them stick on the board, because there are now downsides to popping Phantasms versus before it was pretty much all upside. So now this has a lot more use case scenarios where things are actually going to stick, and this will have effects. I'm giving this a 4-star out of 5. I think this is a super solid card, and one that you have to think about being like in the chain, because if you come in with like Miraging Metamorph or like Enigma Chimera or a couple of these other ones like Coalescence Mirage is a really good one that we'll talk about here in a moment. As the opponent, you have to think, well, they could also just follow this up with Fractal Replication, so I have to consider if I want to live with the pop effect from popping Phantasm, or let this stick on the combat chain and then deal with a Fractal Replication after that. So it's a super solid card in my opinion. Miraging Metamorph is also a solid card. By the way, it's just a 1 for 7. Like, this is a majestic 1 for 7. You pay 1, it attacks for 7. It has Phantasm, so Phantasm says that you can destroy this attack and stop everything. You close the combat chain if you block with 6 attack or more card, a 6 power or higher card. Just throw it out there, Phantasm pops, and the illusion is disbanded. Someone just does that, like the smoke kind of dissipates. So Miraging Metamorph says this: when it's destroyed, you create a token that's a copy of an aura that you control, which is super nasty, because this can just copy any aura that you've already gotten your hands on. I'm pretty sure this, if you just destroy this on a board with a single Spectral Shield, it just makes another Spectral Shield. But that's like the bottom end of the range analysis for this card. Like, top end, obviously, they come in and destroy this while you have a Genesis on board, and you get 2 Genesi. You get 2 of them, and your opponent is super sad because they have to dedicate like at least 1 or 2 turns to destroying both of them. So this card is incredibly scary, because that entire range is always beneficial for you. So anytime they destroy this, you're just like, cool, sweet. As long as I have an aura, I get a copy of it. All the 0-cost auras that you could kind of establish right before playing this are all super fantastic. Well, all but one, in my opinion, are super fantastic for copying with this. This is like pure upside. This card's super good. It probably just goes into every single Illusionist deck going forward. I don't see necessarily why you wouldn't play this, because sometimes you do just go aggro. You just go aggro as Prism into certain matchups. This is a 5-star card. I think this is very much a 5-star card. Shimmers of Silver is one of the first auras that we're going to be talking about in succession here. This one is a majestic aura that costs nothing. It pitches blue, which is really interesting. It blocks for 2, and it says once per turn effect, whenever you attack with an Illusionist aura weapon, put a +1 counter on it. So this would basically trigger, I would imagine, every single first attack that you make, because it is a once per turn effect, and it says whenever you attack, it doesn't say you may put a +1 counter, it just says put a +1 counter on it. Of course, this has Spectra, which is the keyword that says if this is attacked, or first of all, it can be attacked. It's like an entity, and if it is attacked, then it closes the combat chain, basically ends your opponent's turn when they attack into this. Costs nothing, which is disgusting. I just want to say this before I get to all of the other auras. For a bit there, when it first got all released, that these auras were all 0 cost and pitch blue and had these decent overall effects, but nothing like super crazy in my opinion, I thought, you know, are these really actually that good? Because they're taking away from your yellows as Prism. Prism's already super solid into a lot of different matchups. And what does this provide you if not just diluting your yellows and giving you some, you know, overall auras that you may not actually... Like, you're taking things away that were actively doing things in the previous iteration of the deck to do what? And the more I thought about it, the more wrong I realized I was, because what this is essentially doing for you is it's giving you the opportunity to establish this on your turn as a Kodachi from your deck. Think of this card as a Kodachi from your deck. Like, that's the way I started thinking about it. This is not only, it's actually better than a Kodachi from your deck, because this is a Kodachi that can, this is an aura that can attack for 1, turn after turn after turn, that also has a beneficial effect attached to it. And it's one that your opponent can destroy, but if they do, then their turn is usually over. So it's like there's counterplay, but really is there counterplay? And there's a lot of these auras that you can now just flood your deck with. So basically, you're not just having to rely on creating spectrals now, you're able to just establish something like a Shimmers of Silver. I want to say that now because we're going to say the exact same thing for most, if not all, of the other 0-cost auras. This one in particular, being able to basically just add counters to other auras as they attack, super fantastic. This is a super fantastic one. I think this one's a 4-star card. I don't want to say it's a 5-star, but you could probably convince me in the chat that it's a 5-star card. Leave it down in the comment below if you think it's a 5-star card. Right now I'm hovering at 4-star, but maybe I should just say 5. I don't know why you wouldn't run this. Like, again, it's a Kodachi that can attack every single turn, that has a beneficial effect stacked onto it. It's super good. Super, super good. Haze Bending has a lot of the same things. It's a 0-cost aura. This one does not come in a cycle because none of the auras do. It's a 0-cost rare aura, blocks for 2, and it says once per turn effect, whenever Haze Bending or another Illusionist non-token aura you control is destroyed, create a Spectral Shield token. Is this effect... Now, this is kind of how we're going to have to gauge all of this, because for me, Shimmers of Silver, super nice, super solid. Stacking up like +1s on different auras makes them all more threatening as you go, and if you stack them on different ones, it makes like all your Kodachis for 2, right? It's like Pistol for 2 in Dash. Haze Bending just generates you more auras, right? So anytime one of your token, or like non-token auras is destroyed, something like, you know, this card, Shimmers of Silver, if it's destroyed, you create a Spectral Shield. So it's like they're swapping out. Essentially, they're not really destroying, you know, the damage on board. They're just swapping the damage on board for something that doesn't have a beneficial, like, turn after turn effect as well. So this is also, in my opinion, a super solid 4-star card. I think these are both great. Particularly these two. I think these two are like shoe-ins in just about every single deck. If you're going like super aggro Prism, maybe you don't include these, but I mean, even then, I probably would, because they're just Kodachis. Passing Mirage, another great one. By the way, super beautiful art. Beautiful art. Look at that, man. So fantastic. I love the way that they do the Illusionist stuff, because it kind of harkens back to like the the flat images of old. Like you had your friezes, like your Greco-Roman friezes. Is that the right term? I think so. And you have everything like sort of on that 2D plane, and this is kind of giving you that same feeling that you got with the parables and things like that. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted by that fantastic art. These are some of my favorite foils in the set. Your first Illusionist attack each turn loses and can't gain Phantasm. This is a fantastic one as well. A little bit less useful. I mean, it's still fantastically useful. Don't get me wrong, because you do play attacks, and especially these new ones, you do play attacks. Less useful, in my opinion, than the other one. Because if you're leaning into the just generation of auras, then this doesn't play directly into that strategy. It just kind of plays into the side strategy of pushing large attacks that Prism can do. So if you're leaning heavy into auras, this is another aura that you can play. That's again a Kodachi for 1 with a beneficial effect. But it's not as, in my opinion, it's not as strong as the previous one. Still, I think this is still a 4-star card, because it makes your Herald of Erudition turns that much more disgusting. And depending on how you build your deck, this one may present more of a perceived threat to your opponent if you do have some of those aggro pieces in there. And things like Miraging Metamorph or, like Fractal Replication or Coalescence Mirage that we're all going to talk about, those actively want to get popped if you want the beneficial effect, or they could just be treated as damage. So in a way, you take away the opportunity for that beneficial effect if you hit this. I still think it's a great 4-star. Now, Pierce Reality I don't like as much, and here's why. This one just provides a +2 buff. You're already getting such great rates on your attacks in Prism and in Illusionist in general. You're gaining, like 1-for-7s. Like, that's super solid. You can play multiple different 1-for-7s in Prism. Adding +2 is good, in the sense that like adding damage to anything is good. But do you actively need to add +2? Maybe, maybe not. We can argue about whether or not it's actually that great. Does it really target that many breakpoints? If you bump a 6 to an 8, yeah, that feels really good. Bump a 7 to a 9, it just feels like more damage. If there's not a beneficial on hit to any of those things, then it's just kind of more damage over the top. For me, this one sits at the 3 range. It's like a 3-spot kind of card. I give this a 3-star out of 5 overall, just because it doesn't necessarily have that like boom, huge drop the bomb on it kind of flashiness and scariness of a card like a Passing Mirage, or really any of the auras we talked about up until this point. So for me, this one's more of a 3-star card. Still super solid and playable, and it's still a Kodachi for 1 with a beneficial effect tacked on. Coalescence Mirage, maybe my favorite art. I've said that so many times in this series. It's maybe my favorite art. If someone wants to go in and watch all of the videos in this series and just count how many times I've said that, let me know in a comment below. You would get a gold star, in my opinion. Maybe 5, who knows. Coalescence Mirage costs 2. The red attacks for 7. The blue attacks for 5. Phantasm is attached to this attack, and it says when this is destroyed, you may put an Illusionist aura card with cost 0 from your hand into the arena, which is interesting because if you are pushing with Coalescence Mirage and they let it hit, then you can establish the aura after this anyway. If you are not pushing, if you're pushing with Coalescence Mirage and they pop it, you're establishing the aura anyway. So this is one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't cards, and I think that's fantastic. I also think that this is a solid little like 7/6/5 attack, which isn't the best in Prism, but it is still pretty decent. And it basically allows you to not hold a dead card in your hand. You don't have to bank on your opponent not popping this attack so that you can establish the 0-cost aura afterwards. And it allows you a little bit of combat trickiness to just like wait it out, see if they want to pop it, see if they don't want to pop it, and either way you're going to slam it down afterwards. Still, I think this is a solid little 3-star. I don't think this is like super 4 or 5-star, because those previous auras, they're going to flash down. With this card, they're going to flash down no matter what, but you get to attack for 7 or 6 alongside of it. If you don't flash those down beforehand, you could also probably just slam them down. Unfortunately, these don't have the go again after you play them, so you need to get them down towards the end of the turn, which is why Coalescence Mirage seems pretty solid. I think in this current build, you could argue right now that this could be a 4-star because more people are playing these 0-cost auras. As the meta goes on, this may fall more like a 3-star like I think it is. Phantasmal Haze is interesting because it's a 3 for 8, which makes it a 3 for 7 on yellow, which is probably where you want to be playing it if you're playing Prism in the sort of yellow build, which is kind of what we do because you get go again off of all these attacks. And it says when Phantasmal Haze is destroyed, create a Spectral Shield token. So basically, if you push with this and your opponent leaves it on the combat chain, let's say they block it out, you can come in with a Fractal Replication after this. If they leave it and let it hit, then you gain a Spectral Shield and possibly come in. If they pop it, sorry, you don't gain a Spectral Shield if it hits. You just come in after that and with another Fractal Replication. If they pop it, then you get the Spectral Shield, and then you can attack with the Spectral Shield. So for this attack, it's literally all upside, just sort of pure upside coming across. And the fact that it's a 3 for 8 is still pretty decent because you can pitch a blue and cover this. I do think that it is important to note if we're running this in like a yellow heavy, then it is hard to pay 3, which is kind of the reason why people don't run Phantasmaclasm very often, because Phantasmaclasm does need that awkward kind of pitch amount to actually come through and do something. Or you have to pitch 2 yellows. Pitching 2 yellows then gives it go again, but unfortunately you've pitched 2 yellows and you have the Phantasmaclasm, then you have like 1 card left awkwardly and 1 resource floating, so it has to be like a 1-cost attack. Phantasmal Haze is sort of that same way. So for me, this is more of a 3, maybe even, I could even go as low as 2-star card. This probably gets played at the outset and then maybe gets cut down the line because it's just, that spot could be better used by like a 2-cost attack that does something similar. So for me, I'm gonna start this at a 2, and it could very well just be a 3 because creating a Spectral Shield when this pops, or just leaving it on the combat chain and it dealing damage could also be solid. But for me, this is more of a 2-star card just because that range where we play Prism right now, paying 2 for things, doesn't really fit the 3-cost curve. And finally, I do believe this is the last card. Veiled Intentions, cost 1. It's an Illusionist action. Blocks for 2. It's very much like Phantasmify. It says the next attack action card you play this turn is Illusionist, in addition to its other card types, and it gains +4. It also gains the Phantasm keyword. And it says whenever this is destroyed, you draw a card. Go again. This is a super offbeat card, because this doesn't necessarily just get played into Prism. It's the same way with Phantasmify. Phantasmify was a very flavorful card, and this is a very flavorful card as well because it does weird stuff, but this one's like strictly better than Phantasmify because this gives Phantasm, which is fine, whatever. It gives Illusionist to the card type, which is fantastic if you want to copy things with Miraging Metamorph. And then it says when this is destroyed, draw a card. So if they decide to pop it, then you're getting a card back in return. If they don't decide to pop it, then you're probably getting a bunch of damage pushed through, or just damage in general being pushed on top. Veiled Intentions allows you to play like Command and Conquer and E-Strikes in Prism and feel good about it because those cards become Illusionist, and they can get go again off of your weapon if you pitch yellows to pay for them. So this is a really interesting card. Unfortunately for me, this is probably like a 2-star card because this effect in general is the same with Phantasmify. It feels more niche and under supported because you have to just go heavy like aggro to kind of build into this. I feel like this is more the attack a bunch. You build like a super aggro Heralds list or super aggro Prism list in general. You just attack a bunch, you push a bunch of damage, and if they decide to pop it, in this case, you do have the upside of drawing a card, which is pretty nice. So this one's an interesting one. I may end up building a deck around that. Wink, wink. May end up doing that. I'm doing that. Because this is like one of those cards that speaks to me, and I don't think it's quite that good, but it's one that I'm definitely going to play with. That takes us back to the Crown of Reflection that we started with, and that wraps up Illusionist. Let me know what you think about Illusionist in a comment below. Are you happy with the things that they got? I feel like they got a lot of really good stuff, which is great because I like Illusionist and I like Prism, and I like to see Prism doing well. I will say it's one of those big brain classes that you really have to think about and know, but I think more people are really jumping on the bandwagon and learning the class, and are obviously way better than me, and so it's fantastic to watch them play it, and fantastic to watch Prism do all like crazy things. It's why I like Wizard too. Wizard and Illusionist both doing like weird crazy things and like really thinking. That's why they're some of my favorite classes. So I love looking at these cards because it really gets me excited for playing with both of those classes. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, if you agree or disagree, let me know down in a comment below, and make the number go to the number, because we're closing in on the 8,000 subscribers. I'm telling you, once we get to 10,000, we got to do something crazy. I'm going to open like an alpha box or something. I think it'll be fun. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.